Noir Navio Composter's Barracks. Anyone else feel like we shouldn't be wearing this? Leopold asked as he inspected his new armor with visible amazement mixed with disbelief. It's soft and comfortable and not as heavy as I thought it'd be. How much did it cost you, Wyatt? He asked as he marveled at the high-quality piece of equipment that covered his body. The armor was of a dark gray color, polished to such a degree that the metal surfaces reflected the light nicely, and it fit him like a glove. What drew his attention the most, however, were the white peritons resting on his shoulder pads and the pair of small carved symbols at the end point of the armor's neck guard. The symbols were the same, a scythe with a golden handle that ended on a purple blade taking the form of a feather. Try as he might, he couldn't stop gazing at his reflection. He couldn't deny it. He looked good in it. About the same as mine, Wyatt replied matter-of-factly before cracking his neck whilst sitting on one of the communal couches. Idly, he reached for a jar he'd set before their scheduled simulation training began. Opening it, he reached for a Lakoa and began to eat it with gusto. "How can you eat that, sir?" Gregor asked from his seat on another couch to Wyatt's right. His leader's response was to present him with the jar, offering him one of the tasty, dried insects. The rotund man winced and felt his stomach churn for a split second. "I would rather eat a scrag before corrupting my lips with a disgusting insect, Wyatt," he replied, making Wyatt shrug and mutter, "What's a scrag?" before taking another bite. "No, sir, Gregor. Where's the cordiality, Undaj?" "That's how you know he's serious, Wyatt," Noltar commented from his spot next to Gregor. Placing a hand on his friend's shoulder and duly ignoring his judging glare, he turned to Leopold. "Will you stop looking at yourself already?" "I'm sure your armor hasn't changed since yesterday, Leo," the man said with a smirk that felt heavy. "But you're right. It feels wrong for me to be wearing this, Wyatt. What did I do to earn it?" He shook his head once, his expression growing somber as his eyes set upon the symbol on his chest. The symbol of House Okara, a white lotus. His gaze drifted from his chest to Gregor's, finding a snaking river coming from top to bottom, adorned with a boulder resting at each side of the river's banks, the symbol of his house. Similarly, his gaze landed on Raquel's chest bearing the symbol of House Otilo, 3 stars with a flare surrounding them. The bronze-skinned woman must have caught his wandering eyes as she fixed her gaze on him. "What did any of us do? We somehow managed to survive against damned Drazen, outnumbering us 5-1, burn their filthy xenohides, and then beat a force of damnable traitors. Oh, and the defeat of a lone wolf," Raquel countered, crossing her arms. "She's right," Wyatt said after swallowing a mouthful. "We did it all together. I'm a good pilot, we all are, but we all contributed to those victories." "Boss, you're too damn humble. Take credit once in a while," Leopold countered as he moved next to Wyatt, sitting down and reaching for a Lakoa. He took a bite and chewed on it a few times before continuing. Tangy like dried meat. Surprisingly tasty. "If you close your eyes, you can't forget this is a bug," he proclaimed before taking another bite. Wyatt smiled, eyeing Noltar and Raquel quizzically for a few seconds. Sighing, Raquel gave up and reached for an offered treat. Noltar, shrugging, followed suit. They each took their respective bites while Gregor looked upon them with mild disgust. "Not nearly as horrid an experience as I imagined," Raquel was the first to speak. "Speak for yourself," Noltar said, wincing as he set the Lakoa on the table. "Sorry, Wyatt. My palate is too refined to enjoy this monstrosity," he said with a smirk. "I bet Tristan would have liked it. He could eat anything, even those terrible common Miars." Gregor and Leopold nodded in agreement. Raquel swallowed another mouthful before making her voice known. "You've mentioned that name several times before. If I recall correctly, he was your precious squadron leader, was he not?" "That he was," Leopold replied, his expression dropping slightly. "Damn Abacus, that whore son!" he exclaimed before eating the rest of his Lakoa. After a few angry chews, he turned to Wyatt. "Surprised you haven't asked about him, boss." "It was neither my place nor right to ask something so personal. You said it repeatedly." "Abacus caused Tristan's death because he was envious of his position," Wyatt replied, recalling the few times his teammates had spoken about the matter. "If you don't mind me asking, how did he die?" Raquel asked from her seat. "Tristan was a good man. Harsh in our training sessions, but dependable," Gregor began. "He had a massive ego and loved to boast about everything he did, but he wasn't an asshole. Most of the time," Leopold continued with a distant smile on his lips. He was a good squadron leader. He and Abacus never saw eye to eye, but we worked together well enough. Nultar frowned. Or so we thought. He sighed deeply. What infuriates me is the unglorious death Tristan got. He deserved better. What happened? Wyatt asked, intrigued. Before this whole succession dispute began, we were part of a small task force sent to deal with a gathering of pirates. When we got to them and deployed, the pirates were more than ready to face us. We lost 2 ships because their forces were greater than the intelligence reports mentioned. Gregor paused for a moment, frowning as he collected his thoughts. It happened at the closing moments of the battle. Our entire wedge got ambushed by suicidal pirate fighters and drones. Leopold, Nultar, and I were too far away to provide support to Tristan, but Abacus was with him. And that piece of shit left him to die, Nultar growled. Had he stayed to support Tristan, they would have lasted long enough for us and the rest of the wedge to aid them. But he ran away, knowing Tristan's damaged fighter wouldn't be able to outrun the enemies. And he died. A drone smashed his fighter, turning it into slag and debris. He thought that by kicking Tristan out, a mere lesser noble from the leadership position, he'd be promoted to squadron leader, Leopold scoffed angrily. Everyone knew he ran away with ulterior motives in mind. But he got away with it because he's part of a powerful minor house. Well, not quite. Duke Dramore's coup happened before a suitable replacement was found, and then you happened, boss. The heterochromatic-eyed man frowned slightly. I didn't do anything. Abacus Reed ended his ambitions all on his own. Honestly, were it not because he got 2 innocent pilots killed alongside his worthless carcass, I would celebrate his demise. Bastard whoreson without worth, he said as a familiar rage burned in his gullet with the name of another damnable blue blood etched into his soul and heart. True enough, Nultar agreed as his 2 old squad mates joined in agreement. What about you, Raquel? What made you join the Royal Navy? Wyatt and Raquel shared a quick glance, with the former nodding once. Taking a deep breath through her nose, she answered, There's not much to tell. My father, the head of House Otillo, only ever saw me as a chip for him to exchange in his ploys of political intrigue. House Otillo is just a lesser house, not at the bottom, though. His games and manipulation were too much for me to continue tolerating. He never saw me as a daughter, but among my siblings I was the only one to walk away. I want to carve my own path. Then she turned slightly to Wyatt and smiled. Our leader has demonstrated to me that such a thing is possible, whatever our selfish reasons may be. Then a playful smile painted her lips. Oh, and Wyatt is the first squadron leader who hasn't tried to exert his authority on me to warm his bed. Leopold and Nultar sputtered while Gregor nodded in approval and Wyatt frowned slightly. So that's what you meant when you said the red marks in your record were only partially due to your tenacity in battle? Wyatt asked, wanting confirmation, which Raquel gave with 2 quick nods. What about your reasons? Raquel asked in return. My reasons are simple. Since my combat skills are lackluster in melee, I opted to become a pilot. My goal was to become a captain and hopefully serve the rest of my service time doing patrol runs with minimal action until I could retire, using my prestige to gain a good position in a field of intellectual acumen. Gregor was the first to answer, his gaze shifting to Wyatt. But now, I'm not sure anymore. Perhaps if I survive this conflict, I'll consider a lifelong service in the Royal Navy. Many surprises may be ahead of us. Some of us aren't as noble as you are, Gregor, Nultar jumped in. It's no secret what happened to House Olkara. I joined because I had no other option. I was originally going to be a Marine, but I moved away from that path. So far, I've been seeking an honorable death, he chuckled darkly. Failing that, I was thinking of reaching retirement and then living the rest of my life in irrelevance until House Olkara faded from memory and records. Ain't I the life of the party? He asked in grim humor. And then you have me, Leopold joined in with a laugh. Joining the Royal Navy sure beats staying on Rastugi work under the fat bellies of House Bitofo. Would the crumbs be plentiful if I worked hard enough? Absolutely, but I always wanted to see more of the Principality. See more worlds and wonders beyond my home world, he chuckled. That and meet new people. Mainly beautiful women. Okay, I wanted to meet beautiful women for the most part and enjoy good experiences, be it drink, parties, food, or the occasional indulgence of carnal indulgence. Oh, I guess you can add that to my reasons, too, Nultar said, joining his partner in escapades. Raquel rolled her eyes, unamused, while Gregor let out an exasperated groan. And our fearless leader over there just wanted to see the void and retire in peace. Though, if you don't mind me asking, Wyatt, I've noticed that you have an explosive temperament when it comes to the Drazen. I hate those things as much as any other, but you really sound like you hate them with a burning vendetta. That's because I hate them, replied the black-haired man bluntly, but refused to elaborate past that. Then he stood up. We should get ready for our physical training, he said, leaving for his room. The rest of the composters exchanged looks, but chose to respect their leader's privacy, knowing he had his motives to keep his reasons to himself. Instead, they went to their rooms in preparation for the tender mercies at the hands of Cynthia Winfield. Wyatt wished he could tell his squadmates more, but he didn't feel he was quite ready to relive those memories again. He knew the moment he started, he wouldn't be able to stop. Besides, while he liked them all, especially Leopold, due to their shared commoner background, he still didn't consider them his friends. Close and trusted allies? Most assuredly, but not his friends. Not yet, and certainly not as close and significant as Clara and Cynthia were to him. Perhaps once they were closer to how he felt about Jincho, Galt, and Milcades. Perhaps. I'll tell them, eventually, Wyatt thought, as Cynthia finished putting Leopold on the ground. His defeat marked the end of their training session. They were dismissed a moment later, and his eyes narrowed. The blue-eyed woman's stance felt off as if she wasn't entirely there. With a deep exhale, he stood up, signaling his squadmates and Declan that they could leave as he made his way to Cynthia. His muscles were still burning, his stomach hurt, and his back was in pain, but nothing that he couldn't handle or disguise under a curtain of normality. Joining her side, he was greeted by a raised eyebrow. Wyatt was about to open his mouth, but decided to keep things more private as they walked. He'd run the first tests in the morning, and his second venture into accessing the network fared only a little better. For a split fraction of a moment, the world around him seemed to come to a halt. His vision was filled with enhanced reality virtual parameters that simultaneously flooded his brain with information and provided understanding and direction. He couldn't move his body to interact with it. Or rather, his physical body took too long to respond to his commands. It was a disconnection that felt unreal, unnatural, and inhuman all at once. Yet his sense of self and perception remained intact. No, that was the wrong way to describe it. It was whole yet fragmented, united by invisible threads much like a scarf, sweater, or a simple sock was woven together. Divided, segmented, but united as a whole thing. Disjointed but functional, and in that odd sensation he could still operate with a virtual sensation of his limbs as a fragment of his consciousness was allowed to peer into a realm of flowing information given meaning and form he could understand. Accessing the Nornavio's network, he quickly found Cynthia, requesting to create a private channel between them. It was like speaking through their helmet's communicators, but without the helmets. In his altered perception, the wait felt like minutes until it was accepted. Then everything shifted back to normal, with the difference that at the corner of his field of view, a small icon signifying the link was active. Wyatt shook his head before he spoke, not with his voice, but with his mind. I wonder if I'll get used to that feeling. Do you always go through that when accessing a network? He asked with palpable discomfort. You'll get used to it. It becomes easier the more you do it. I've been doing it for as long as I can remember. It is like second nature at this point, Cynthia replied in a serious yet relaxed tone. What do you wish to discuss, Wyatt? You, in fact, Wyatt answered, earning a glance from his blue-haired friend. Are you feeling all right? You're not hurt or sick, are you? What brought your concern, Wyatt? Cynthia asked, genuinely surprised by his questions. During today's training, you seemed distracted for some reason. Less you, in a sense. Not nearly as intense. More forgiving with your demands, he pointed out, returning her glance with one of his own. Cynthia smiled for a brief moment before replying. Of course you'd be able to tell. It was a fool's dream to think you wouldn't notice those minor lapses in my performance and attitude. Let me assure you, Wyatt, that I'm in perfectly good health. I've never known disease and likely never will. My fatigue comes from another source. Clara? Wyatt asked, concerned. Cynthia nodded once. Her health and life aren't at risk, but the stress of her duties, current events, and recently revealed truths have taken a toll on her mind. Normally, this wouldn't be of too much issue, for I know how to aid her in similar cases. But at the moment, all my usual avenues of choice are closed off. Except for trying to take her mind away from focusing on issues beyond her immediate control, she said, her tone strong and almost trembling with impotence. Do you think she'll feel better with a knitting session? He asked, trying to help his friends. That will be useful, but she needs something more powerful than that. Offering her to watch a fighter race or a competition would be much better. Live performances, she clarified at the end. More powerful, eh? Wyatt muttered back. It took only a few seconds before an idea began to take form in his mind. I've seen that glint in your eyes enough times to know you're conjuring madness, aren't you? Cynthia asked, more intrigued than worried. Wyatt smiled with a devilish enthusiasm that tickled his innermost rebellious side most pleasantly. Perhaps. Last time we broke a few bars of that gilded cage. Would you like to help me break a few more, Cynthia? Cynthia's eyes narrowed. Her expression turned serious and determined. If it is for her, I'll gladly help in whatever manner I can, Wyatt. What must I do? I'll need Milcady's help and Commander Redford's permission to actually do this, Wyatt replied. I'll convince the old man. Milcady's will help, if for no other reason than to find amusement. What do you want to do? The blue-haired woman asked, now fully committed. Wyatt turned his head to face her, killing their connection. She'll fly. Rightful honor, Duke Cornelius' private quarters. Cornelius Draymore sat at the head of his desk, alone. He'd dismissed Veronica moments earlier, and now his quarters were sealed. Before him, the blue ribbon with white dots rested peacefully. He eyed it in silence for what felt like a short eternity before he cleared his throat. Alpha Protocol Starman enabled. Authentication code LGNK017BNH. Codename Inti. Suddenly, his quarters resonated as an energy field distorted the enclosed space to create a true zone of silence outside the confined bubble around the Duke. Immediately after, the terminal on his desk came to life, vomiting erratic words, distorted noises, and scrambling static until the screen settled on a blue background with a singular white dot in the middle. Good day, Duke Cornelius, the synthetic voice greeted calmly. Cornelius touched his throat, regretting choosing his strongest wine, as the uncomfortable rumbling rasped against his throat, even before a single word escaped past his lips. Greetings. To what reason do I owe the pleasure of your call? Please, Cornelius, we're allies. We both want what is best for the Principality. There's no reason for you to be disgruntled, the voice said in a calm, gentle, collected tone. It is not your request that causes my discomfort. It is another matter of a personal nature which brings displeasure into my voice, Cornelius replied truthfully. Ah, understandable. We hope this won't cause issues in your efforts to be recognized as Lord Regent, now will it? The voice asked in that same tone. The blond man straightened up. My conviction is absolute. I will honor our deal to its fullest extent. My personal issues are but a minor distraction set in my private time. Nothing more. We are pleased to hear that, Cornelius. For the sake of the Principality, you must succeed. We applaud that you're doing everything in your power to avoid shedding as much blood as possible. Truly, it is commendable. Regardless, if you must be cruel and ruthless, then be so, Cornelius. Don't make the same mistake your predecessors have repeated ad nauseum for over 3,000 years. If you must sacrifice hundreds of millions to save hundreds of billions, then make that sacrifice without hesitation. The voice paused for several seconds with only a pulsating static cutting through the silence. War, true war, requires sacrifices that you cannot begin to fathom. Steel your heart, Cornelius. Cornelius narrowed his eyes as he intertwined his fingers tightly. I'm fully aware of that. Sacrificing countless lives means nothing. But ruining infrastructure, resource-gathering forces, and ships needlessly is an outcome I wish to elude. That will only cost years in repairs. Years that could have been spent in far more productive means. Then we are in agreement, Cornelius, the voice agreed, pausing for another brief moment before continuing. Allies that we are, we issue 2 warnings, Cornelius. The Drazen Collective is stirring far more than we predicted. We aren't sure what caused this unforeseen outcome. Be wary. They are unlikely to remain idle for long. Yet another incentive for you to achieve success. The Lord Regent closed his eyes, taking a deep breath as yet another problem was put on his shoulders. And the second? Chaos stirs within the Arabian Commonwealth. Our eyes and ears can't find much more than that. Pray, if you know how to, that such chaos is the product of internal conflicts and not something more dire. Be ready for anything. The future of the Principality is within your hands. Remember that, Golden Raven, the voice said as the screen began to distort again. Our time is at an end. We'll be watching and hearing the events unfold, Cornelius. A second later, the screen went black. Disengage Alpha Protocol. Starman, the Duke said, and the uncomfortable bubble around him disappeared in an instant. Grabbing his throat, he sank into his seat, feeling exhausted and drained. For several minutes, he remained there, unmoving in contemplative silence. "In Julius's name, I will be victorious," he declared, his voice heavy and filled with the power of a man ready to claim his destiny.